Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. We're doing an Angels and Demons video, and we're doing an Angels and Demons bit today. And if you hear some jangling or the sounds of things crashing or anything in the background, that's the new kitten called Storm in the house. She's a bit of a monster, so I apologise for that in advance. But today we're going to be doing about demons. We're going to be talking about Baal, which is quite a big topic, so I have to admit I have trimmed it down quite a lot. So let's get into it. As always, I'll do a quote from a story they're in that I'm working on, and then I'll give you the background information, and then I'll give you the character profile for how they sit in my universe. So let's get into this. Servant of the Almighty, never. I am Baal. I am the Almighty. I am the Almighty, bringer of thunder, lightning, rain. Behold humanity, your God King. A quote from Ambitious Aim. Baal is a big thing, a complicated thing in fact, because he was a god worshipped a lot and in the Bible comes up a lot, often because he was one of the big deities in the region, debatably linked to Yahweh himself. Whether Baal just proves that the local mythologies all wound up to develop into the dominating religions, and thus Baal being synonymous with one true god is debatable. Some could say worship of Baal and links with his own imagery can be linked to how many would depict or represent God, the thunderbolt being one. But Baal is an awkward thing, both demonic and also not, linked to the older stories of the region and yet rival against the Abrahamic God. Even now, Baal or Baal is thought to mean lord or owner and is used in this way, as well as the addition of Baal or Baal or Baal or Baal onto other names to denote a being as the rival, the demon, as in Beelzebub. So where do we start? Actually, it's really tricky to figure out where to start with Baal because it's such a chunky topic and the name is thrown around to different demons and different deities. Certainly, there's predominantly Baal Hadad, and Baal Hamon is of interest, the later being the Carthaginian god that potentially had baby sacrificed to him, and the first link to Yahweh. So, and the previous link to Yahweh. So I'll try and separate them out into three parts: Baal Hadad, Baal god of Sidonia, and Baal the demon. Everything is going to be rather trimmed down, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. And I'll trim the character profile too, or I might ruin my Ambitious Aim story, which is about Baal. But the one thing we can be sure of, if you are going to point to an enemy of the Almighty in the Old Testament, then it's probably Baal. Right, Baal Hadad. Now, there are some that say that Baal was a Canaanite deity all on his own, but most tend to believe that he is more linked to the thunder and fertility god Hadad. Now, Baal is used to mean Lord, and there is discussions that as time went by and the name Hadad became too sacred for all the priests to say, Baal was the general term used for this god. You can connect that as you wish. Now, Hadad is also known as Adad, and is known as the storm fertility god in Akkadian, Iskar in Sumerian, and sometimes called Baal Zephon. His symbol is the bull, and as such, some scholars like to link all references in the Old Testament towards bull symbolism as a secondary deity on Baal, sometimes even suggesting that when the commandments were given, the golden bull the golden cow they were trying to worship was the symbol of Baal as an elder god from their land, and thus totally rejected for Yahweh. He's also often seen bearing a thunderbolt, and like some, has been linked towards Jupiter and Zeus. Baal Hadad's most famous stories is a series called the Baal Cycle, and my big inspiration for Ambitious Aim, so let's talk about that. Baal appears in a variety of epitaphs, but not always in a particular role, but generally being mentioned as weather god. He is thought to cause dry harvests when he is spending time in the underworld, and the autumn storms are said to be from his return. Due to the importance of rain in the Levant region, Baal Hadad became quite important, with the people believing that he could intervene and alter the weather upon their prayers. So when 6 tablets were found relating directly to Baal Hadad, the story of Baal and his interactions with the other gods to become king amongst them, the Baal cycle or Baal myth, was found. The first 2 tablets discuss Baal and the sea god Yam fighting. Initially, that Yam decides he wants to rule the other gods and be the most powerful of all the gods. Baal disputes this and defeats Yam. Now, there is missing damaged text, so some things are not known, but there are thought to be links to this battle of Baal against Yam's sea serpents to the story of Yahweh taking out Leviathan or the Lotan. As in some of the variants of the Baal-Hadad cycle, where the stories are equated and evolved over time. From the tablets, Baal is said to have been granted 2 magic clubs, which he uses to pummel Yam. The next 2 tablets talk about Baal building his palace on Mount Zephon. Baal and his sister Anat also search for the secret of lightning, a power that Baal needs if his sister will aid him in gaining his palace. They call upon their friends to make gifts to the wife of El, so he will let Baal have his palace and not have to stay at their home. Baal then decides that anyone who objects his power now should die, and so he asks Mot, the god of death, for a visit and makes these promises. And well, that's where things get interesting again. Mot loves human blood and flesh. So, as he's invited to a meal of bread and wine, he finds it offensive, and thus Baal must fight with Mot. In order to soothe a god threatening to eat him, Baal says that he'll be his eternal servant, but the sun goddess tells him to find someone to take his place and then hide. Baal finds a child amongst the livestock and dresses it in his clothing and sends it up to Mot. The sun goddess insists she'll bury Baal to help him hide, and the messengers of the gods state they've found Baal dead by the river of death. Yes, Baal looks to have murdered a child. The figure is buried by the sun goddess, and the other gods go into mourning for him. Anat then goes to see Mot to rescue her brother's soul. Mot's insistent he ate Baal, so Anat loses her cool and kills the god too. Who complains about and kills the god of death? Yep, his sister was pretty pissed. However, Baal soon returns back, and not long after, Mot too, who complains about how Anat and Baal have both treated him. Baal and Mot end up fighting again, but the sun goddess insists that El, the supreme creator, is on Baal's side, and so Mot has no ability to kill him. As you can imagine, there are a lot of things in that you can link to other stories, specifically the story of seasons with the lack of rains, a time of death, and Baal having the constant ability to outdo death. There is a lot that can be said in comparison with other supreme deities, and no doubt influences on them too. But it is believed the 7th book of Daniel takes a lot of inspiration from the battle with Yam for God overwhelming the Leviathan they created, as well as stories of Yahweh's control. But I covered that chunk when discussing Leviathan and Leviathans. Now, Baal-Hamon was worshipped in Carthage as their supreme god and thus linked to Baal. Specifically, he is the Tyrian version of Baal, and thus the Baal that the prophet Elijah has to deal with. Like with Baal-Hadad, he is a fertility god, and there is thought, as there is with some of the stories of Baal-Hadad, that he might be the son of a god named Dagon, another demonized god we'll talk about later. But instead of a bull, he's a ram. The Romans wrote that Carthaginians sacrificed children to this god, which might be a mistranslation of the Baal cycle, wherein Baal dressed the child as him and let Mot eat himself and let Mot eat it. Certainly there is a link to Moloch through this worship mentioned in Daniel that could be linked to this form of Baal. Now, in the Bible, Baal is a name for a lot of different gods, and even linked to Adon, meaning Lord, and thus linked to Yahweh too. However, the Baal most think of is the Baal of Sidonia. Is the Baal of Sidon. Like to Baal-Hamon, the Baal of Jezebel. Now, the story of the prophet Elijah is certainly an interesting one that includes the slaughter of the God of Israel's prophets, and Jezebel, high priestess of Baal and wife of King Ahab of Israel, setting Baal up as the main god of Israel. Ahab is greedy in many forms, and his thought that there can be more than one God harkens back to the 10 Commandments being issued and the fact he is lacking faith and respect to the one true God. Elijah is the last of the prophets left and informs Jezebel and Ahab that there won't be a single drop of water to spare because of this false god, and thus a drought sets in. Baal being a rain god, his prophets are many and his priests too, and Elijah is just one against them. Now, focusing on Baal here, not Elijah, although my story, that is part of it and an inspiration for it. Elijah puts a challenge for the one true God, for the priest to call upon their god whilst he calls to his to light the sacrifices they hold for them. Baal fails to light his sacrifice, but the one true God does. So the prophets and priests of Baal are slaughtered, and upon their death the rain comes, proving the one true God has the power over rain. In Islam, where Elijah is Elias, he is noted at warning them all of the worship of Baal, and that it is also the title of a golden idol. Now, there are various other Baal-named entities, and like many, they have been later demonized in Christian texts and altered greatly from what they were originally. Baal is often heralded as an eighth deadly sin, that of fear, as well as a representation of the false god or the ultimate symbol as blasphemy. Baalim was the name used by Milton to describe a female deity, and there is, of course, Beelzebub that have infamy in demonology and hold the names of Baal. He is listed in the Dictionary Infernal as a crowned head with the head of a cat and a frog crawling upon what look like spider legs in the picture, but state he can appear as either simultaneously. He is thought to have the power of invisibility and controls over 66 legions, is hoarsely voiced, and one of the few titled Demon King, let alone thought to be a demon with control of the east direction. But Baal is often just another side note, like many other demons developed from God names in the Bible. My Baal is a bit of everything, and maybe a bit new too, but certainly a pain. But I'll just give you the bare minimum so I don't spoil too much. Name, Baal, position, false god, story featured in, ambitious aim, role, main character, gender, male, description, golden and beautiful with a radiant aura and an ability to summon the clouds to spill rain. He bears the horns of a ram and a ball upon his head, later wears the symbol of a thunderbolt carved into his chest to denote what he controls. Realm, hell and the veil, and on earth a little too. Abilities: ability to summon clouds to give rain, but later takes on the power of the Almighty's thunderbolt. Master himself: personality, determined, ambitious, and willing to betray others to prove himself right, let alone lose countless followers to the enemy. Baal is arrogant, selfish, but charismatic enough he can lead with his voice alone, and does not tend to believe that anything is able to stop himself. He has a delusional mindset regarding his own might that is unpleasantly irked on by others. Relations: Belphegor: he is the son of Belphegor and has been given praise and softness and power by his demonic dam that adores him but does rebuke his faults on facing Lucifer. Mammon: the nephew of Mammon. They are practically raised by this demon, and their desires and greed are coaxed on by this being and they are urged to be greater than all others. Beelzebub: his father, who despises him for the audacity he has regarding his position against Lucifer, and thus constantly torments him with whispers of his followers betraying him. History: keeping it simple. Baal is born in hell to Belphegor and raised by Mammon. He is beautiful, powerful, and charismatic, and Mammon has seen his future and knows the great chaos and discord he will create as well as wound the Almighty. Mammon thus encourages Baal to feel rebellious in hell, to feel it was not his choice, and thus he does not deserve to stay or be punished here. He stokes up rebellion amongst the other young demons born there, with an idea they should live amongst man and be man's servant while secretly plotting to overthrow the Almighty on earth if he can. He gathers many to him, and once he faces Beelzebub in an argument where he is forcibly silenced, he begins his rebellion, and woe is creation for it. Final comments: I sit back a lot and go, why did I choose Baal for this? Maybe it's because it's so complicated and interesting, or maybe it's because it's the best way to showcase the Veil's concepts of heaven, hell, and everything else. I don't know, but it gets interesting. I hope you found that interesting too. Thank you.